Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello and welcome to the second part of a two-part series on the Israel-Iran war. The first part of this series was published yesterday. We hope you enjoyed listening to it. This is the second part, and we hope you enjoy listening to it too. This is the final part of this two-part series. So let's dive in.
There certainly seems to be no more a separation between peacetime and wartime. I mean, you could use different pretexts, right? I mean, it could be preemption for Israel. It could be some other reason that Russia gave. And so that any and all action is fine, seems fine nowadays. I just wanted to touch upon the role of the US in this. Is the vacuum that's been created because US has sort of stepped away from, actively engaging in conflicts? Has that helped bring about this new normal, this new equilibrium where everything goes right from when Russia did the Crimea thing, then it also attacked Ukraine. The US obviously helped, but it was not boots on the ground, right? And Trump has always been speaking about not having US troops on the ground, probably those sorts of things. It's been helping with military aid and all of that, but not really actual boots on the ground. So and also Trump to some extent looks like a person who can be enticed with deals and all of that, right? So a very transactional sort of a relation that he has, that he brings to the table, right? So has that in some way made this new normal, this new equilibrium as the new normal, right? Has that contributed?
Look, I think it's all to do with the global situation in terms of the economics, right? The balance of power has shifted towards Asia. Now we are seeing a rise of a number of middle powers, and these are being quoted by both US as well as China, and this has given options to all these countries as to which way their interests will be served. Apart from that, the US is stretched. It's hugely in debt, which is not a good thing. In the way it is impacting its own domestic politics. We saw it with Musk and Doge and things like that. So that is one. Secondly, its military power is stretched because it can't be all over the place. China has risen; its navy is far bigger than the US. Although the US is still most powerful navy in the world, it's still most powerful armed forces in the world, but it can't be everywhere, and it's very expensive for them to keep spending. They're looking at even cutting off acquisition of advanced fighter jets. I mean, Trump has announced that the next generation of fighters will be there, but in general, they're looking to just step back a bit. The war in Afghanistan cost them $2 trillion and a lot of blood as well. Now there is no stomach for in the US to fight these forever wars or any war. So they are stretched. They don't want to fight more wars in this, and people are saying, okay, go ahead and do whatever you want to solve the problem. And not only that, the Europeans are not only embroiled in their own war with Russia and Ukraine, but they have been weakened economically. They have not grown at a great pace over the last 2 decades, so they have been significantly weakened. So that means that all these middle countries are now able to assert themselves better, and also because of their rising profile, they are being quoted by all these countries, which makes them see themselves as having more leverage now than ever before.
Right. You made an interesting point about China and Russia, or the creation of a multipolar world, and that's sort of also affecting the U.S. policy, right? Because earlier, if say for example, recently the U.S. embassy in Tel Aviv was struck by an Iranian missile, I guess, right, and something of this sort would probably have, had immediate reactions from the U.S., right? But now U.S. hasn't really made an unequivocal statement on its potential involvement, and Netanyahu also probably has made some statements to the effect of Israel being capable of fighting this war alone. You mentioned that it required help for the, but apart from that, what do you think is the true picture? How much is Israel dependent on the US? And same question for Iran. And do you see the US stepping in much more proactively at some point?
No, there is no doubt the US is involved in various ways, providing intelligence, even in defense. The US warships which are stationed in the region have taken out some of the missiles which were fired by Iran towards Israel. So that is obviously there. Direct offensive action so far, the US has kept away. Will it stay out of it? We don't know. I mean, Trump has given 2 weeks time. Maybe it's a diversionary thing. For all we know, he might attack tonight. Because if you remember, he said just watch out for next 2 more days, things like that. And there is the Israeli ambassador to US who said you will see something on Thursday night and Friday. So Thursday night is gone. We've not heard much, but today is still Friday. It's not the end of the day. We don't know what can happen. Maybe these are all psychological operations, playing mind games with each other. But I think the US may get involved. That Fordo facility is very critical, and only the US has the capability to knock it off. Israel says that it can still do things without the US. Maybe an audacious attack, intelligence-less operation, boots on the ground to just disable the whole thing, blow it up. I don't know. Maybe it may be a suicide mission kind of a thing, where it's just one way because the special forces might go in but might not be able to come back, or they may be very heavy casualties. All these kind of calculations will be running in the mind, and once the options are then laid out, with the US very closely involved in knowing what Israel is up to, because they're sharing information with each other, they might come to a conclusion that the safest bet would be the US to get involved and drop those bunker busters. Nothing can be ruled out.
Right, right. The international community, surprisingly, including China, Turkey, and G7 leaders, have called for a de-escalation. Right. So, what do you think? What do you think would be the likely regional consequences if the conflict continues? How would it reshape alliances and balance of power in the Middle East, and maybe on a larger global level?
I think if you see, Iran already appears strategically weakened. If reports said that they reached out to Trump and see if they could get Israel to declare a ceasefire, and Trump responded by saying that there has to be an unconditional surrender. But if there is any truth in Iran reaching out to the US directly and ask for a ceasefire, that itself shows there is a bit of weakness over there. And this is the regime which forms this axis of resistance against the US and Israel, and now it is asking for a ceasefire. That shows, and it has also used that the Arabs to convey this message across. So the Arabs also know that this is a weakened power, and this is a country which was showing itself as axis of resistance, kind of projecting itself as a leader of the Muslim world and standing up for the Palestinians and things like that. But now it's weakened. So this will have definite consequences in how the geopolitics of West Asia shapes up going forward. Iran is not that great a power as it projects itself. It's all its proxies are gone. Domestically, it is the regime might be weakened. Its defense forces has been battered. I mean, Israel has taken out a lot of these launchers, missile sites. Apart from even the production facilities, obviously the nuclear program has been targeted. Its leadership has gone. Iran is definitely weakened right now, and how it reacts, we don't know. I mean, warning of a larger war, but does it have the capabilities to wage a larger war? What will the larger war look like? Is it going to attack the Arab countries, with whom it has in recent times, developed a fairly working relations, if not the best of ties, but they have been getting closer a bit. Um, will Iran want to blow that up? I don't think so. Maybe it's just a bluff of a threat of an enlarged conflict. What Iran could do is target the shipping, close the Strait of Hormuz, which will impact oil and gas shipments. But again, that will hurt the Arab states, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain. So will they do that? I don't think so. I mean, it's one of the options that they have, but then it's going to have consequences of its own. It will just turn the Arabs against them. So Iran is in a very, very tough spot. How it comes out of this remains to be seen. As a country, in terms of what decision it takes, and as regime, what will be the consequences for the regime in Iran?
Right, right. Where do you see China's role in all of this? Right, so China has never sort of like actively gotten involved in conflicts. That way, it's been more of a background player or maybe a gray zone sort of level player. But do you think that's one factor that's hanging on this conflict, because of because of which the US also might be calibrating its moves. Russia, maybe it's weakened, so maybe I'm not sure if that's good enough power to intervene at this moment. But do you think China as such, or even Russia maybe, is impacting this conflict?
No, Putin has very recently, I think yesterday or day before, said that their the strategic cooperation agreement does not oblige them to supply Iran with weapons. So he has washed his hands clear of this one, and this despite Iran supplying Russia with the Shahid drones and we've also heard ballistic missile supplies. So this is where Russia stands. It has, and there is a precedent to this. It also did not support its treaty ally Armenia when it was fighting a war with Azerbaijan. So Russia's stand on standing by with its friends is very very iffy. It may issue some statements, but if they are not going to stand by in terms of weapon supply or material support when it's required, then obviously its value comes down. China again has been it shows the limits to China's power. It does not have the kind of influence that the US still has. I mean, the US may not be the force it was in the past, but still it's a very dominant force where it can influence a lot of things. Today all eyes are on Washington if it will get involved in this war. Nobody's asking about what China would do. Apparently there have been three flights at least from China to Tehran. What the cargo was is not known. Maybe military supplies, we don't know. But such is the overwhelming uh, asymmetry in conventional power between Israel and Iran. We don't know what three plane loads of Chinese supplies would do. I mean, we don't know what those supplies are. Um, but overall, China can't influence anything in this region. This was visible even after the October 7 attack, where it was US which was doing all the heavy lifting. The US which got the Qataris to get involved and start negotiating and get some hostage release and things like that. China was nowhere in the picture. So though China's profile has risen over the last decade or so in terms of pushing things around on the global scale, it does not get involved because maybe it does not have that much power or influence to do so.
Right, right. Hey, could you also give a lay of the land of what are the alliances like in the Middle East, right? Who's on the side of whom? Like Jordan, for example, was sort of a neutral player, but it has also helped shoot down missiles from Iran, I believe. So, what are the alliances? Who's supporting whom in the Middle East right now?
No, the larger alliances, all the Arab states are US allies. That's the thing. The US Central Command is based in Bahrain. The US has an Air Force base in Qatar. It has base in Saudi Arabia. You know they're all allies. So there's nothing else over there. The Arabs have tried to come to some kind of to develop ties with Iran after years and years of hostile relations, but it's still not there. I don't think the Arabs are going to be too unhappy about Iranian nuclear facilities going. I mean, their concern is going to be if, say, for instance, Bushehr nuclear power plant is taken out, what will be the result of that, the environmental impact on them, the water getting polluted because they rely on desalination for their drinking water and other purposes. That is of their concern. I don't think the Arabs are going to be too unhappy about Iran losing its nuclear capability, because if Saudi Arabia has very clearly said that if Iran acquires nuclear weapons, they will have to follow suit. I mean, the Saudis have been trying to negotiate a nuclear deal with the US so that it can have its own nuclear program. So yeah, I mean, the alliances, in terms of any reworking of alliances, there's nothing that of that sort that's going to happen, because it's what is there is already there. I mean, it's all tight.
Right, right, right. Now, moving on to the another aspect of this war, right? So this war, these actions of Israel have demonstrated a fusion of intelligence and special operations, also, right? So, what sort of strategic and operational lessons can other nations, right, especially democracies which face peer adversaries, right? What can they learn from Israel's approach to this war, to preemptive strikes and tactical surprise, right?
I think, say, look at India's context. Let's talk about that, right? We have to be very wary about such operations which can happen, like the Ukrainian operation in Russia and the Israeli operation in Tehran. We have faced terrorism for a long, long time. 10 people came and wreaked havoc in Mumbai. 10 people, slipping into India with some drone parts, or drone shipments coming from some smuggled from somewhere, and these guys deploying it, close to our strategic installations. These are the things that will now weigh heavily on the minds of the security, apparatus, because things have changed, and because these things are so cheap, $500 drones or $1,000 drone or even cheaper, that gives them disproportionate, killing power. Ukraine spent $100,000 to take out $7 billion worth of equipment. This is huge, hugely, disproportionate in terms of attacking cost versus defending cost, and that raises the costs immensely. As it is, India is stretched, in terms of tracking terrorists and all kinds of threats that are there within and outside. It will add to the cost and makes it very dangerous. And India has very clearly said that any terror attack on its soil now is going to be considered as an act of war, which means that any such attempt within India would be seen as an act of war, and that will lead to a war. So, we're living in very, very dangerous times.
Right, right. And I guess operationally, India could probably draw a lot of lessons regarding some aspects that have come up recently, right? I mean, air defense seems to be something which is very of paramount importance nowadays, right? And that also then flows into intelligence integration, right? So systems like Akash Tir on our side, right, which help probably tie up the intelligence or the analysis part of the different wings of our forces, right? So, in that sense, do you see some aspects like missile defense or air defense becoming more important going ahead?
No, what is very clear, if you look at the Russia war, the Russia-Ukraine war, the India-Pakistan war, and the Israel-Iran war, it has proven that there is no substitute for a potent air power. Russia lacked the air power that could establish overwhelming air superiority over Ukraine and then operate with impunity. And because of that, it faced all these losses. It could not achieve its war aims. If you look at Iran, again, Israel has got complete air superiority over Iran and is operating with impunity. It has taken out, we just talked about all this and what all Israel has done. If you look at the very recent India-Pakistan conflict, 4 days after the first day where India targeted terror infrastructure and potential loss of aircraft over there. But once it decided to, once the operation was enlarged to targeting Pakistan military, India operated with impunity. And this is what we have said: we have operated with impunity. So there is no substitute for conventional military might. There is no substitute for conventional air power. I think this should be the lesson that should be drawn from these three wars. Air defense, again, no substitute for that. India cannot do what Israel is doing. Israel is a very small country when it comes to missile defense. India has a missile defense program, but that was largely targeted, not largely, but only targeted towards, taking out any nuclear attack on India. But now, as we've seen, ballistic missile, conventionally armed, are flying into cities, which makes it very difficult. You can't intercept all these missiles. It's very expensive. India is a very large country. It has huge population. We have a number of cities which are over 10 lakhs in population, and you just can't provide safety to all of them in terms of defenses, even in terms of creating shelters, bomb shelters for them. That will require its own deterrent mechanism. So that means conventional. If you look at it, this India called out Pakistan's nuclear bluff. So this nuclear domain, you know, nuclear deterrence as such, or bluffs of such to stop conventional attack have been called, and that has not worked. This is what happened with the India-Pakistan war. This is what has happened with the Iran war. No more of these bluffs. People are calling it and going after it, and only conventional might can get you strategic results, not nuclear.
Right, right, right. Now, moving to the diplomatic response that India has given to this war, right? So, India doesn't seem to be taking any strong stance either way, right? So, do you think India needs to do more to reclaim the high ground that it held in the past, maybe diplomatically, or do you think India's strategy has been fine, right? Guided by national interests, playing a tight diplomatic game, but then that raises the question about what about human rights violations, right? What about ethics of warfare, rules-based world order, and other such imperatives, right? Don't these matter anymore? So does India need to take a stand on this? Because otherwise it's a scary proposition for where the world is headed, and that has implications for India too, right? So shouldn't do you think India should take a strong stand on such issues given its past of upholding these as guiding principles?
No, I think India has done a balancing act. India has called out for respect of international law when it comes to targeting of civilians. This is what we've seen in India's statement on Gaza. but obviously India shares a very strong and close relationship with Israel, and India will walk the fine line. India's West Asia policy has been one of it's a masterclass where it has managed to over the years, over the decades, managed to have relations with the Arabs, with Iran, as well as Israel. Somehow we have managed to balance it out. Even here, we have issued a statement of de-escalation and diplomacy. Doesn't matter much. I don't think either sides are going to listen to it. India can play the role of a facilitator because of its relation with both sides and the standing it has with both sides. But this is only possible when the both sides are willing to come to some kind of a conclusion that they should take it all forward with talks. I don't think Israel is interested this time. I think it sees an opportunity to militarily destroy Iranian nuclear facilities, not only nuclear facility, but even Iranian military. That is what it has been doing. For Iran, the choices are either the choices it makes will have implications domestically in terms of regime security. So India, I think, has struck its fine line as it always does in such situations. It does not condemn any country. We did not condemn Russia, for instance, but we call it to this is not an era of war and things like that. We don't condemn. There was a SCO statement which was issued, which condemned Israel for the attack, but then India issued another statement saying this it was not party to the discussions of the SCO, which led to this condemnation. So India distanced itself from condemnation because India just generally stays away from condemning any countries and just says that you guys should countries should talk and resolve issues in peaceful manner, which is just a continuation of India's policy of either abstaining and staying away and being good books of all countries rather than take one side or the other. Although depending on perspective of how people see it, people might see that this is a pro-Israeli stance rather than anything perhaps they'll see this as pro-Israeli stand. But India would say that no, we are calling for dialogue. Um, Again, so which way one looks at it depends on their own perspective.
Right, right. And now coming to another point about the nuclear aspect of this war, right? So nuclear weapons program of Iran was ostensibly the trigger for this. Nuclear facilities have been attacked, have been targeted, scientists have been targeted. So what does all this leave us with respect to implications for nuclear security and non-proliferation in the region? And this has the added hypocrisy of Israel being an undeclared nuclear power, calling out Iran for its nuclear weapons program. So there's a lot of haziness over here, right? So how should the international community respond to prevent further escalation and to prevent a sort of an arms race from getting expedited here?
I think nobody can control an arms race. I think the nuclear non-proliferation treaty is perhaps already dead. If Iran is actually going to walk out from it, it's threatened to do so. Even if you look at some of the old ayatollahs of nuclear non-proliferation, they are looking to acquire nuclear weapons because they don't trust the U.S. Extended deterrence. Right, the U.S. itself has encouraged. I mean, Trump in his previous stint as the president actually asked Japan to go and go to South Korea to acquire their own nuclear weapons. So NPT is perhaps already dead or on its last breath. Does that make it world safe? Of course not. But this is how it's going to be. Like I said, we discussed earlier that we are in a very new world where old conventions, old thoughts, even old deterrence strategies are not working. We're in a very different era, and I'm sure by the end of this decade, we might have some breakthrough nations as far as nuclear weapons is concerned. Iran itself, if this regime survives and it survives with sufficient strength, then I would say that Iran will most definitely acquire nuclear weapons. It would just convince itself that this is the only way it can survive its regime as a country. It already has the know-how. Yes, a lot of scientists have been killed, but I'm sure they have some kind of institutional memory out there to make sure that there is a succession and someone takes the program forward. So, the net result of this war actually could be Iran acquiring a nuclear weapon.
Okay, that's a bit scary. But I mean, yeah, that's something that's conjecture and maybe. But now looking ahead to how this pans out in terms of India's relations with Iran, right? So you had written an interesting article where you had sort of made the case that a changed Iran would be better for India. And there were some rebuttals also that were posted to your article. Both of them were like interesting ideas. The rebuttal was that pre 1979 Iran was no great friend of India. So what do you think is going to happen if there's a regime change, or if there's not a regime change? What is better for India?
Yeah, if there is a regime change, if there is a secular setup over there. When I mean secular, I mean Iran is a Muslim country. It's 99% of everyone is a Muslim over there. So I'm not talking of secularism in terms of respect for all religion within inside and all those kind of things. That's it, as it's the case with India. I'm talking of secular in terms of their outlook, how they see the world, and not in communal terms, not how Islamists see the world. Right. So that was my contention. So if there is a change regime which reaches out to the world and wants to integrate with the world, obviously is going to work well for us. We might be able to do, we'll be able to do business with them without any fear of sanctions and things like that. Look, we've not been able to develop our ties with Iran because of all the sanctions on it. We had to cut our purchase of oil in 2019 after Trump warned of sanctions. So we stopped doing that, right? And that hurts us, right? We have to then go and compete with what's remaining out there in the market. It raises the cost for us. Uh, Even the development of the Chabahar port, which gives us access to Afghanistan and Central Asia. I mean, we had to go slow, sometimes stall, stop, all kinds of things. Just because there's this threat of sanctions all the time. But if an Iran which is free of sanctions, Iran which does not, which is not seen as a threat by others, and then sanctioned by, say, the U.S., uh, will mean that India will be able to operate more freely with Iran. I mean, we share historic ties. I mean, we are civilizational ties, right? We'll be able to work much better. So that was my point of view. Someone gave the rebuttal of the Shah of Iran, back in 1960s and 70s. I mean, how can you apply what was the reality of the Cold War era, where the Shah was aligned with the U.S., the Pakistanis were aligned with the U.S., and the Shah helping Pakistan. I mean, that was happening with the prodding of the U.S. to help Pakistan. You can't apply it in modern times. It's the same equivalent like people use the 1971 USS Enterprise appearing in Bay of Bengal to threaten India during the war over independence of Bangladesh. Do we allow that to dictate our ties today? A lot of people say, yeah, I mean, that should give us some kind of a pause in how we see the US and not get too close to it. But how can you define what happened 50 years ago in today's era? I mean, two different things. I mean, I'm glad someone has not gone all the way to Nadir Shah, to decide how we take our ties today.
Cool. Great. Yusuf, this was a wonderful discussion. I think we've covered quite a few points, a very comprehensive discussion that we've had. And any parting thoughts that you have for listeners? I'm sure our listeners will enjoy this episode. But yeah, any last thoughts that you have?
I think the parting thoughts it's all countries for itself. Every country has to be guided by its own self-interest, and self-interest should be very hard thought out. And sentiments and emotions cannot dictate how you pursue your self-interest. You have to be really cold about it, and sometimes things may appear as immoral or hypocritical, but this is part of international diplomacy. So we just have to be hard-nosed about our own interests and how we pursue them.
Great last words to end this episode. Thanks Yusuf, again for joining us on this podcast. Thanks to our listeners for listening in. Thank you.
Thanks, Arindam. Thanks so much. It was a pleasure speaking.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaInst or our website takshashila.org.in.